Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast on Fresh Take Network. I'm Simon Chaskovsky here with Caleb Peterson.
Man, I had to go anger bike. I just biked up a hill because I was so mad.
I was up 20 goddamn points. Tyreek Hill sucks. God damn it. I'm so mad.
And I thought I was going to be rich. Feel an entire parking structure with that.
Build an entire baseball stadium. Yankee Stadium is filled with Lambos. Hello and welcome back to the Trick Play Podcast on the Fresh Take Network. I'm Simon Chaskovsky here with Caleb Peterson, and shortly we will be breaking down all the sports-related news, rumors, and drama that you are going to want to hear about. And we've got a lot going on this week, a lot of good stuff to talk about. Just for one thing, starting off with the NFL Midseason Awards, we're going to be I believe it was NFL Access gave out their midseason awards, so we're going to be taking a peek at all of those and giving our own and just giving our takes on their takes. Are they bad? Are they good? I know, but you don't. So we can talk about that. This is already off to a great start. If you can't tell, I'm a little sick. I'm going to open with that, so I'm going to sound like this for most of this podcast. Get used to it. Then we'll talk about the MLB, I believe, going into the free agency. It's all the talk in the baseball world right now. A lot of interesting names, including some from overseas, which we've been starting to see in recent years. But it feels like there's quite a few more, at least in this off season. So we'll make sure to get into that and the impact it could have in the MLB next season. And then we've got the NHL, and we're going to be talking about the Pacific Division specifically. And what I mean by that is what the hell is happening in the Pacific Division. We'll get into it more when we get there. Caleb, are you ready to get into it?
Absolutely. All right. So, as I believe we're on week 9 of the NFL season has passed us by, we're getting into kind of the midseason mark. Some teams that are at 8 games, some teams are at 9, but either way, we're about halfway through the 17-game schedule. Some trends are starting to emerge. And so, like we talked about in the intro, I believe NFL Total Access picked their players for awards like MVP, Offensive Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Defensive Rookie of the Year. So we're just going to go through all of those, give our picks, see how they compare to NFL Total Access, see where we agree, see where they disagree, see if they're any good. So, Simon, I don't know where you want to start. Do you want to start with MVP or leave that for the end? What are you thinking?
You know, I'm not too sure, actually, because there's a lot of different ways we can do this. We could start at the bottom. We could go rookies, start with that, because just to be clear, we're going to be going through MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year, Offensive what did I just say? Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year. So we're going to be going through all of that. But yeah, what do you think? What do you think's the more interesting place to start?
Let's leave MVP for the end. Keep the people
Sure.
Give the people a reason to keep watching.
Okay. We'll start at rookies then. What do you think's more fun, defensive or offensive? I can give you.
Well, I think defense.
If you want to start with defense.
Yeah, we could. Okay, we can start with defense then.
Okay.
Should I give my pick if it isn't already incredibly obvious?
Well, I can tell you that I agree with you on your pick. So sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So defensive rookie of the year is Devin Witherspoon, and I don't think I think it's close-ish because I've seen people go back and forth between Devin Witherspoon and Jalen Carter. I think Devin Witherspoon is going to get it in the end. I think he has the advantage of playing cornerback, which is a lot more of a featured position. Like Jalen Carter getting a sack isn't going to get as much play as Devin Witherspoon's pick 6 against the Giants, but I do think it's well deserved, and I think there's a couple reasons why. It was again it's very interesting that it is these two players because these are the two players that obviously Seattle was thinking about taking, because Jalen Carter was who many people projected they'd take, especially given how much they're suffering against the run.
Thought they would take.
Yeah, and so Devin Witherspoon pick kind of came out of nowhere, but it really I think it was the right pick for this team. I think it does a couple things.
Well, in hindsight, I think it's really clear that it
in hindsight, I think if they took Jalen Carter, they would still be fine. But I think it adds a lot to their team. I think the first thing that it adds is just the the way he plays, the style of play that Devin Witherspoon has is just electric. And I think it elevates everybody on that defense. You cannot go a like single game without watching, aside from maybe this last Ravens game that we don't even fucking talk about, without him doing some sort of play or some sort of something that just like jumps off the screen. And most people are going to point to the Giants game because that's what he had the pick six that was on primetime. Everybody saw it. But like every game that he started, he has just looked like the best player on the field. He's looked better than anybody else out there. He's made a guy like Tariq Woolen seem like cornerback number 2, and Tariq Woolen probably should have won Defensive Rookie of the Year last year, in my humble opinion. So just to see that, like him making impact plays every single game, doing it so consistently, whether it be like a big hit or an interception or anything like that, or just locking somebody up, I think he has all of those elements that make a Defensive Rookie of the Year. And he's doing it against good competition, too. I don't know if there was the stat that went around that when he was on Jamar Chase in the game against the Bengals, I believe he had like 1 catch for 3 yards whenever Devin Witherspoon was covering him. So he's shown it against great competition. I think he's brought the level of play of the Seattle defense from somebody who's watched the Seattle defense for the last, like, I don't know, 11, 12 years.
We've had some bad
playing
defense
with this,
in the last couple of years as well.
Yeah, which people associate Seattle with a good defense, but it really hasn't been that way. There's been some historically bad defense played in Seattle the last like 4 or 5 years at least.
Yeah, I was going to say 5 years.
Yeah, like as I think the last, like as soon as the Legion of Boom died, I don't think we've had nearly as good of a, obviously, but even anything close to that level. And it's starting to feel like that again. And I think it's not just because of Devin Witherspoon. Obviously, they have a lot of key players, but I think the energy that Devin Witherspoon brings is so similar to that of like a young Richard Sherman, minus a little bit of the trash talking. Doesn't quite have the same trash talk ability that Richard Sherman did, but the energy is there.
That's like GOAT level.
That's a bar.
And you say that you don't think that it's solely been on Witherspoon, and I agree with you. Obviously, it's not solely on him. There are 11 defensive players on the field at all times, but I think you can give a lot to him as being that final piece that really like stuck it in for this defense, because it felt like it's felt like we've needed like a good second corner for that last 5 years, because even when we had Shaquille Griffin, it felt like we had nobody to slide next to him, and then we have Tariq Woolen, and then all of a sudden, and sure, like Kobe Bryant was fine, Mike Jackson was fine, all of those guys were fine.
Mike Jackson was not fine.
But you know,
Mike Jackson was a liability.
I'm saying fine. All I'm saying is decent, right? All we've had on that other side of the field has been a decent corner, and then we get Witherspoon, and all of a sudden it's like it just clicks. And I think a lot of that can be just attributed to now finally we actually have a balanced defense. We're not just like our strengths aren't just like stacked at the top with no depth. We finally have a lot of depth at that corner position. We're locking down those top corners, and we're actually able to defend against a lot of the best teams in the NFL, except the Ravens. And
and I do want to bring up that Ravens game because I think that's a good point. For Devin Witherspoon specifically, like he still played well in that game. You want to know why the Ravens beat us? It's because we got bullied in the trenches. That's how teams beat us, because they know they can't throw the ball on us. The Ravens just ran the ball the entire day, and we couldn't do anything about it. That's what, as bad as that Ravens game was. And trust me, I still cry myself to sleep thinking about it, even though it's been a couple days removed.
I have a Ravens fan in my uni classes. Cade, this is a shout out to you. He was very humble about it, and by humble I mean not fucking humble at all.
Oh, fuck that. The Ravens are a very good team, and I'm gonna be doing some more Ravens praise later in this episode, but like it still hurts. But yeah, like that's what teams have to do against us, and I think I kind of knew this is why I'm not that upset about it, because I knew we were going to lose, because this is what the Ravens do well, and that's how you beat our defense, is by running the ball on us and just overpowering our defensive line, because if you can do that, then there's nothing, because guys like Devin Witherspoon have locked down the receivers, and I think we do a good job of stopping the passing game.
That's so cool as well, is he's not only just a lockdown corner. He's so physical and athletic as well that he's so fun to watch. Like, I mean, you even go back to the game against the Giants where he had 2 sacks. Like, it's just nuts. He's one of those players who can really be good anywhere on the field, and in not any position, but you know what I mean, anywhere on the field, where he's just fun. And I think that's going to be a big reason that I agree with you. I think he'll win Defensive Rookie of the Year at the end of the season over Carter because of the fact that he is stuck on an island out there on the far side of the field, and he is doing an excellent job at it versus Jalen Carter, who's not to attribute his success to how good that Eagles defensive line already is, but obviously it takes away a little bit how much help Jalen Carter's getting right off of the bat.
Yeah.
Because he pretty much got dropped into a perfect situation on that defensive line. So I think I agree with you. I think Devin Witherspoon definitely deserves it. We can move on, though. Because we can move on to Offensive Rookie of the Year, which I, at the very least,
this one will be short.
Yeah.
Although who did NFL Total Access have as Defensive Rookie of the Year? Did they have Witherspoon?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So, and I mean, you said that it's close-ish. I don't think so. I actually would argue that saying Jalen Carter deserves it more would be probably fairly controversial at this point, but I think it's close-ish.
Just like I've seen people pick Jalen Carter, and I disagree. I think it will get farther apart as the season goes on, because I think in this conversation, the fact that Devin Witherspoon missed the first game kind of gave Jalen Carter a bit of a head start. But I think the gap's going to widen a little bit. But I think as of now, it's close-ish.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the same thing as anything else, where 2 different positions, how do you even compare it? But
yeah, that's kind of why these awards are stupid.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. When I just look at, with these types of awards, I look at where both teams would be without the player. And that's not always fair, especially when you're looking at a player who's on a defensive line, where that's a part of the game where if you are the only good player on a bad defensive line, you're not really going to show off as well.
Aaron Donald.
Unless you're Aaron Donald. Yeah, unless you're Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is the one, exception to that, maybe.
Yeah. Aaron Donald is the exception to a lot of things.
That's true. But it's a lot harder, I think, I think the Seahawks would be in a bad fucking spot without Witherspoon. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We would be a much worse team defensively.
Think about how this defense looked last year.
Yeah. I mean, and Tariq Woolen is great. He's a great corner in his own right, but Witherspoon has, like you said, he's made him at points look like the second corner.
He's been completely overshadowed this year, which I kind of don't love because he needs to get his respect anyways, but it just is a testament to how good Witherspoon has been.
They're both incredible at their positions, respectfully.
They are, yeah.
But we should move on. CJ Stroud. We can just talk about that for a minute because obviously it's not a controversial pick. It's not very close.
I think he locked it up this past week.
Yeah.
So I didn't watch a lot of that Texans Bucks game because I was busy poking my eyes out with the kitchen forks and watching the Seahawks Ravens game because that was going on at the same time. But as soon as that torture fest ended, I turned on Red Zone to watch the end of Vikings and Falcons as well as Texans Bucks. Shout out Josh Dobbs, by the way.
Yeah.
But CJ Stroud, just looking at the situation they had at the end of that game, it's 40 seconds to go score a touchdown. That is Patrick Mahomes level shit to just take the ball from the own 25 and lead this amazing drive with 2 all pro level throws, both to Tank Dell, one on the corner route to the left sideline and then the other for the touchdown up the middle. Those are Pro Bowl, all pro level throws. You do not see that from a rookie quarterback. I don't even think there's anybody really in the conversation for this other than CJ Stroud. It has to be him, and it's because of drives like that, because he's been doing that really all season.
And to give you who some people have as the second guy, just to show you the gap, is Puka Nacua, who, as a Puka Nacua fantasy owner, it's not close.
Yeah, and Puka Nacua had a better start to the year.
Oh, yeah, but ever since Cooper Kupp has come back, he's kind of fallen off the
It's not and it's not even to say that Puka Nacua is a fluke or anything, because I still think he's a good player, even alongside Cooper Kupp. I think he's proven that with the consistency that he's had in the last few weeks. But obviously, when you're a quarterback, you're going to be considered more valuable. But I also think C.J. Stroud is just playing better.
C.J. Stroud is almost having not
has
almost.
less help.
Yeah, he's having a historical rookie season as well. Like he's been
most passing yards for a rookie quarterback in NFL history last week.
Yeah, like it's pretty much just incredible how good of a season.
C.J. Stroud has thrown for more yards in a game already in his career than Russell Wilson has, which is insane to me.
That is insane. But anyway, excuse me. We can move on to I believe Defensive Player of the Year is where we probably want to move on. Okay.
Yep.
So who's your pick?
I think this one is the toughest. I think there's a couple players you could go to. Let me pull up the. I had a list of the odds, and I was going through. So I think they have the favored right now is Micah Parsons, which like fair.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and then Myles Garrett. But I think I'm not going to pick either of those guys. My pick is T.J. Watt.
Okay.
And now this is a little bit of a like. Even though he's like third favorite, it feels like a little bit of a chalky pick because he wins like I don't know how many times he's won, but he has to have won at least a few times. But there's good reason for that. There is no other player. Like I think you could even consider T.J. Watt for MVP with how good this Steelers team has done compared to what their overall performance is, especially on offense. They are in the playoffs right now, and that is mostly because of a guy like T.J. Watt. He has a.
And just to jump in and quickly add into what you're saying, C.J. Stroud already has more career touchdowns than Pickett. Like just to show, and they're still in the playoffs. I'm not saying anything about Stroud. I'm saying something about Pickett.
Yeah, and because that offense has just been brutal, and it's not like it has been a lot of Pickett, but it's also been their play calling. They don't have a lot of playmakers there. It's been their offensive line. It's all of that. And so they just have not had a functional offense. They go off in the fourth quarter sometimes, but otherwise they don't have a functional offense. And it's been TJ Watt making like just these plays that will win a game for the Steelers on defense. Like, I don't think I've ever really seen a player other than like Aaron Donald, sometimes Myles Garrett, just take over a game on the defensive side. Like TJ Watt wins games for the Steelers on defense, which is absolutely insane to say. And I think he's just because of how the Steelers are performing above expectations, and it is their whole defense. They obviously have lots of other guys on there, like Minkah Fitzpatrick. I don't know if Cameron Hayward's still there, but obviously it's still a great defense, but it's TJ Watt who makes that whole machine move, and I think they probably have a couple less wins and are out of the playoffs if it's not for him. So I think guys like Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett are playing really well. I think in terms of like if you're looking at MVP on the defensive side of the ball, I think it has to go to TJ Watt with how much he's impacting the games for the Steelers.
Okay. You made me want to change my pick with that one because you did kind of sway me a little because that makes a lot of sense. But I'll stick with what I was going to go with. I was going to say Myles Garrett. Just solely looking at the stats, I think he's been the best defensive rusher in the NFL this season. Already tied three-way tie for most sacks in the season. And then just looking at everything else across the board, I don't know. I think I'd personally give it to him based on stats, although I will say I have not had an obscene amount of time to watch a lot of the games, especially Browns games. Sorry, Browns fans. But so I think I'd go that direction. I see what you're saying with the TJ
I think
Watt.
Myles Garrett is just less consistent. Because, I'm thinking about, I watched that entire Browns-Seahawks game, and he got locked up by Charles Cross and, Jake Curran. And I look at that kind of thing, and I'm like, yes, he has games where he does stuff like TJ Watt. Like that Colts game, I believe he had he forced a fumble in the Colts end zone that was a 1-point game, and it turned the game for the Browns. That's the kind of stuff that TJ Watt does, and Myles Garrett absolutely can do that too. It's just not happening as consistently, and I think he also has more support in that Cleveland defense than TJ Watt has in the Pittsburgh defense, although it is close. I think it just has, from a game-to-game basis, TJ Watt makes more of those game-breaking plays. I do think it's close between TJ Watt and Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett would be my 2, but Like just looking through some of the plays, like another good example of TJ Watt changing the game against the Rams. He's not just sacking quarterbacks or forcing fumbles to change games. He's also intercepting Matthew Stafford in the red zone, which completely changed that game. It's stuff like that where he's just a complete all-around player, and him intercepting passes is not that rare for him, even though he is a defensive end. He makes more of those impact plays to me than Myles Garrett, and I think while it is very close, I'm going to give it to TJ Watt because I think he's had a little bit more impact on the Steelers season overall than Myles Garrett has on the Browns season.
And the worst part is I don't even know that I disagree with you, so I'm not even going to try and debate that with you. I'm going to stick with the pick that that was my gut when I was looking at
I think it's
everything.
Close.
I agree with you. I do think it's close, but if you're looking at going back to what I said before when looking at these types of awards and looking at team impact, because I think that's such a huge thing, like I said, I agree with you. I think TJ Watt definitely deserves it, so I won't be a hypocrite. I think I'll give you that one, TJ Watt. Okay. So, do you want to move on? Offensive Player of the Year.
Offensive Player of the Year?
This one is a bit of a fun one in my opinion, looking at it, but I'm curious who you think deserves it.
So I'm looking at, this is Offensive Player of the Year is a kind of stupid award because it's basically like which non-quarterback is the best.
Yeah.
And it's funny to even see some like quarterbacks in here because it's like if a quarterback wins this award, it's just going to be the guy who won MVP, which is dumb. It's offensive other than quarterbacks, which is a kind of a stupid system. I think Myles Garrett kind of talked about that, how it's dumb that quarterbacks are the only ones who wins MVP. And I think the Offensive Player of the Year conversation is kind of a focal point of that. But I digress. I think I try to not let my personal bias affect me, but like I'm human. I have to. Is Christian McCaffrey probably going to win this award? Yes. Do I feel dirty doing that? Absolutely. So I'm going to give it instead to a guy who I think has had just as much, if not more, of an impact on their team's fortunes, and that is Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
And I say this for a couple reasons. I think the first reason that I say this is not even what he's doing with the Dolphins. It's seeing what the Chiefs look like without him. Now, the Dolphins did just beat the Chiefs in Germany. Partially because Tyreek Hill fumbled. But looking at it as a broader scale, the Chiefs have, even though they are still the Chiefs and are still playing really well, they're winning because of their defense now. They're not winning because of their offense, and their offense looks completely flat. Mahomes no longer has these big plays. He's throwing short to guys like Rashee Rice and Kadarius Toney. Their offense does not look the same when Travis Kelce is the only guy. They won a Super Bowl without Tyreek. Obviously, they can still make it work because Mahomes is Mahomes, but it just looks different without a difference maker like Tyreek Hill. That Chiefs offense only accounted for 14 points against the Dolphins because the one was a fumble return for a touchdown, right? So that's one aspect of it. I think the other aspect of it for Tyreek Hill is the way this Dolphins offense has exploded around him. And I think it's all kind of come into form this year with Mike McDaniel calling the plays, with Tua able to get the ball to him in space. I believe I saw like he was on pace to just like crush a bunch of receiving records. I don't know if he still is because he had a down game against the Chiefs, but he was like, he had already gotten 1,000 yards like 7 weeks through the season, which is something that nobody has ever done before. Absolutely insane for a receiver. And I think the way you put it in a couple of these other conversations is a good way to think about it. If Miami doesn't have Tyreek Hill, where are they? Yeah. They are nowhere near where they are right now. They're not putting up 70 points in the Broncos, I'll tell you that. Just because it adds so much of an extra dimension to their game. And when he doesn't play well, like when he kind of has an off game like he did against the Chiefs, like he didn't do that much. Tua threw him a good ball and he dropped it. You can just see how much more one-dimensional this Dolphins offense worked. And that Chiefs game was kind of a one-off. The whole other season he has been completely deserving of these accolades, and you can just see what it's opened up for the Dolphins offense, and there's a reason they're being taken seriously as a Super Bowl contender this year as opposed to the years before. It's because he's finally integrated into that offense well. Mike McDaniel's calling plays, and he's having a historic season. So I think CMC is like probably equally as important to the Niners, and you can kind of see that with how they've struggled since he's been out. I do think Tyreek Hill has a bigger impact on the Dolphins than CMC has in the Niners.
Well, I agree with you. I just don't think the one thing I disagree with you on is I don't think it's that close between Tyreek and CMC. I see what you're saying. I still think that Tyreek is, if he doesn't win it this season, if he continues at the pace he's going, it will be a travesty and an incredible robbery. I think that he's having a ridiculous season. And you were talking about some stupid stats, just to name a few. Currently, 9 games into the season, he already has more yards, touchdowns, and targets than T. Higgins had all of last season. And T. Higgins is not a bad wide receiver.
He's a very good wide receiver.
He's a very good wide receiver, exactly. So, or not targets, sorry. Targets is the one thing. This was phrased weird. Another quick stat, Hill is currently averaging 4.1 yards per route run through the first 9 seasons, which nobody has done since they started tracking it.
Oof.
And the number 2 guy was Tyreek Hill last season. Which is kind of hilarious. I don't think it's close. That's basically what I'm trying to say. I think Tyreek Hill is having a ridiculous receiving year. If he continues at the rate he's going, records be damned, Tyreek Hill is about to walk over everything. I think that this season he's having has just been absolutely ridiculous. And you pointed out again, like the impact. What would the Dolphins look like without Tyreek Hill? It would be bad. It would be, I'm not saying they'd be a bad team, but they would not be anywhere as good as they are right now. I think that offense revolves around Tyreek Hill in a certain degree. And I have a hard time saying that they would be anywhere near where they are currently without him. So I have no issue saying that I think it's Tyreek Hill, and I don't think it's close.
I do think it's close. I do think CMC opens up that Niners offense, especially when you have a quarterback like Brock Purdy with the variety he has in the running and passing game. But I do agree that I think Tyreek has bigger impact. I think it will. I think it depends. I think this is a race that will depend on how the fortunes of these two teams kind of play out. If the Niners continue to lose like they have been, then Tyreek's probably going to start to run away with it a little bit more. But if the Dolphins kind of slip up, I could see it kind of going the other way. I think it's relatively close as of now, but I do think Tyreek has a decent lead on him today.
And NFL Total Access. If you want to talk about those,
I was going to ask.
There's a CMC, and I don't agree with that. Like I just said.
Okay. I'm not mad about that. Like it's not like an offensive opinion to have. I can see it.
The thing is, in any other season, I'd agree with you, but I just think Tyreek Hill's having such a bonkers season that it's hard to even think about, like, just giving it to anyone else with how strong he started. Obviously, he could start slipping up more, and he could just, and the second half of the season, CMC could take it. Like, I'm not saying that I necessarily think Tyreek Hill, like, this is a guarantee Tyreek Hill will win it or deserve it at the end of the year. I'm just saying, through the first 9, I don't think it's close.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair.
We can move on to
who
MVP,
do they have for defensive player of the year, out of curiosity?
Garrett.
Okay.
I believe it was Garrett. Which I agreed with. But I also agree with a lot of things you said about Watt. So I think that one's a tough one. But
that's close. I think both of these are close. Those are the two closest races, other than MVP, which we're going to get into.
Yeah. So their candidate, who they chose for MVP, is really interesting, and I can't wait to hear about your opinion on that. But if you want, we can start with yours.
Okay. I think this MVP race is just terrible right now, and I don't think there's anybody that deserves it. I think if they could not award it to someone, because it's all MVP is basically just the best quarterback award, and I think each of these quarterbacks, you can go down the list and list a reason why they shouldn't win it. I don't think it should be Mahomes. I think everybody is going to list Mahomes. I don't think it should be, just because, like, in comparison to everything else, like, their offense is not the reason they're winning games. I don't even, like, Mahomes is obviously the most valuable player to the Chiefs, and he's going to be that until he retires. But the offense is not the most valuable side of the ball to the Chiefs. They're winning games because of their defense. So in a game where in a season where the Chiefs defense is playing at this kind of level, and that's the reason they're winning games, I can't justify giving it to Mahomes in any context, because that just kind of feels reflexive to where it's like, oh, it's an MVP award, throw Mahomes in there because he's the best player in the league. I don't think that's what this award should be. It's about who's most valuable to their team right now. So I don't think it's going to be Mahomes. There's you can go down the list. I'll pull up like MVP odds. I think Mahomes is number one.
Which is interesting,
yeah,
because I actually disagree with that as well. I don't think that Mahomes deserves it, and I don't really get the hype behind him getting it. I just somehow put down all my tabs. That was really weird. Why I had stuff. Google, you're screwing me. What's going on? Okay, well, anyway, I was gonna say I don't agree with Patrick Mahomes. I think that, especially when you think about the last little bit, especially early in the season, where people were. Like, I feel like around week 6, we all started going like, Mahomes is having a strangely bad season.
Like, it's not even he's not even doing bad. It's not the most important part. It's not because of him. It's not like he's playing badly. It's because the offense is not clicking in the way that it should.
Yeah, but I just
even though it's mostly not.
People started looking at him.
He doesn't deserve MVP.
Yeah, and that's kind of exactly where I was going with that, where it's just like people were actually looking at his stats and going like, it's not bad, but it's not Mahomes. Like, Mahomes is elite of the elite. That's not what this is. When I look at this, I just don't see that. And I think people are finally starting to realize that.
Yeah. Mahomes, I don't think is, even though I think a lot of outlets are going to pick him, I don't think he's the choice. I think you can run through a couple other quarterbacks that all are equally kind of deserving as Mahomes, but I don't think there's always reasons why they shouldn't be. Like Tua, I think, is someone who was a real candidate, but I think the issues that the Dolphins have been having against teams with winning records kind of devalues that performance a little bit. And also when you have a guy like Tyreek Hill, it makes you think, how important is Tua actually to that offense, and is he the most valuable player on that side of the ball? I don't think he is, even though I think he's having an amazing season and is genuinely a top 5 quarterback. Jalen Hurts, I think there's a case that can be made for him, but I also think this Eagles offense has not been performing the way that it should. Like, the Eagles are not playing their best football, which is kind of scary considering they're 8-1.
Yeah.
But they've kind of been sneaking by in some of these games, and he hasn't been playing up to what we saw from him last year. Last year, Jalen Hurts was better than this year, Jalen Hurts. Then I'll go into, so those 3 guys are all high in the MVP rankings. I don't think they're going to get it because of those reasons. I think here I have a top 2, and I kind of convinced myself into my second guy just now. Joe Burrow. I think this depends on how. I'm not saying he's going to win it. I have a guy right now. If the voting were to happen right now, I have a guy who'd be ahead of him. But I think if Joe Burrow plays at the level he has the last 2 weeks for the rest of the season, I think it makes a case for him as MVP that will be impossible to beat. Because you see how listless this Bengals team was when he was hurt, and then now that he's healthy, how explosive they look and how they're beating up on good teams like the Niners and Bills. The Niners and Bills games weren't close because Joe Burrow is just lighting these guys up. The Bills game, again, it was a 1-score game technically in the end, but it was a 2-score game for most of it, and it was not as close as it seemed. The Niners game was a 2-score game. Joe Burrow is lighting up people right now, and while I don't think he deserves it as of now because he wasn't performing early on the season, if he continues this level of play, it will just go to show how valuable he is, because the Bengals sucked when he was hurt, and now they are performing like a juggernaut again. I do think there's someone who's more valuable right now, and it's kind of going under the radar. Maybe this is a little bit of recency bias with what I just saw happen to my beloved Seahawks, but I do think this could be a year for Lamar Jackson to win the MVP. And I don't know if he's playing. The case against Lamar Jackson is that a lot of it is he doesn't have the same kind of gaudy individual performances that a bunch of these guys have been having. But I think what a guy like Lamar does to your defense, and I was just watching this against Seattle, the specific skill set that he has and how well he's able to execute it. He's not doing anything flashy. But just what I saw with this Ravens offense against Seattle, he just creates an impossible challenge for the Seattle defense to where, like, if anybody else were to come in, like, even like, because we played against Joe Burrow when he was relatively healthy. I did not have the same fear that I had against Lamar Jackson because he is such an enigma and creates such pressure on a defense. Like, Tony Romo said it in the broadcast really well. You cannot cover all that this Ravens team does. You cannot cover. You have to commit to something, and you're going to leave a spot open. Because if you go to stop the run, like from the running backs, Lamar is going to either pass it or go outside, rush by himself. If you commit to Lamar on the run, he is going to dot you up throwing down the field because he can do that. Like if you commit to trying to stop the passing game, he's just going to roll out of there, dodge your guys in the pocket, and scamper for another 20 yards. It happens so many times against the Seahawks where it's like 3rd and 15. The Seahawks play fair, like, and the score doesn't show it, but the Seahawks played fairly well in that first half, at least on defense. They forced the Ravens to punt the first couple drives. They got them into 3rd and long, but it's just what happens when the play breaks down and Lamar is able to just like run so effortlessly for a first down. It's like he doesn't even care about how many yards there are. That kind of thing, especially with how good the rest of this Ravens team is and how well I think they're going to do the rest of the season, where I think they're probably going to be the AFC's #1 seed. I think it's going to come between them and the Bengals. Just looking at that, I think that will be what it comes down to, because MVP is a team award more than we'd like to admit it is. I think if the Ravens win the #1 seed, I think Lamar's going to get it. If the Bengals win it, I think Burrow's probably going to get it. But as of right now, with what I just saw and the pressure that Lamar Jackson puts on a defense, I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson. And I don't think he's getting enough MVP talk with how he's playing right now.
Yeah. And the funny thing is I do agree with you. I actually did have Lamar. But I think it does kind of show what you said right at the very beginning, in the fact that this is a very crappy MVP race. Just in the fact that you're totally right. I don't feel like anybody necessarily deserves it. Because I was thinking Lamar beforehand, because he's been a big part of why the Ravens have been fairly good this year, and most of the quarterbacks have had different stretches where they haven't been very good. I thought the Joe Burrow's pick is very interesting because of how bad he started at the beginning of the year, and whether that was because he was hurt or not. His stats were not great, and
it was very clearly because he was hurt. You can like see a difference.
You can't,
and just how he's moving.
Regardless. I'm just saying that you can't just throw that away because he was hurt. You still have to take those games into account. And I think you almost like you can use that though, because it's like if like if you're voting on it and you've watched all the games that Joe Burrow has played, you can see how different this offense is when Joe Burrow has his mobility versus when he doesn't, which is why I think if he's consistent for the rest of the year, he can win it, because then it's almost a case for you to say, look at how garbage this team was when I wasn't at my peak. That's fair. Okay, I do understand that. That's a very good point. I still think that I would give it to Lamar, but just to add on, I was looking at it because I was curious. Obviously, Lamar he has an MVP winning season. And I was curious, if you take a look at that season, halfway through, compared to what he's looked like this season, another season where it looks like he could win MVP, and it looks nowhere close. It's actually kind of sad. And that really goes to attest how good of a season Lamar had in 2019. And that's not me trying to put him down now. I think that just shows how bad of a pool we have this season. Because
I agree.
I still think I'd give it to Lamar based on everything, because he is having a pretty remarkable season. Like, all things considered, it's still very impressive. He's looking like he's going to hit 4,000 yards on the season passing yards, for what's going to be the first time in his career, which is cool. But I think I don't know. And that's assuming that there's nothing that jumps in the way to stop him, because he's had some injury concerns in the last couple seasons. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But that'd be my only reason for necessarily not betting on it, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's like that doesn't shock me that his numbers are nowhere near that MVP season, because, again, like you said, this MVP race, there's not there's not a clear candidate, and I'm saying Lamar gets it. I think he's having a good season, but there's a case against him, and the case against him is that he's not making the flashy plays that you normally see in an MVP type season. He's not jumping off the page. I think he is the most important player to that Ravens team, which is why I think by definition he is MVP right now. But that's also why I think if Joe Burrow continues to play the way he does, that's the kind of flashy play that wins you an MVP. And if he keeps that consistent, I think he overtakes Lamar. Even though Lamar is playing great and is very consistent, Joe Burrow will at that point be more important to the Bengals team than Lamar is to him. And I think that can put him over the edge. But as of right now, I think in a relatively weak MVP field where you can make a case against everybody, the pressure that Lamar puts on defenses is the most valuable trait that any of these quarterbacks have.
Yeah, no, I do agree with you. I think, like, the more I look in depth into Lamar's stats, the more I like what he's doing. I think that while he's been less of a volume runner in this season compared to that 2019 season, what he's done, he's been a lot more efficient compared to that season. Like, for example, he's going to easily beat, he's already, in that season, he only had 7 touchdowns. This season, he's already at 5. First downs, he's looking to blow that out of the water as well. It looks like he's just a lot smarter with the way he runs, which I think just comes with experience. And I think that's maybe what we're seeing this season. We're seeing a more developed and experienced Lamar Jackson. And I think if we keep seeing this from him, I think this could be someone. A lot of conversation after that 2019 season was, great, do it again. Because at that point we hadn't seen a quarterback who relied so heavily on their rushing ability actually survive in the NFL long term. Because sure, Mike Vick was great, but he had injury issues on his own, and then he just didn't stick around long reason. I don't know, didn't have that dog in him, or whatever you want to say. But whatever you want to say, there's a lot of things you can attest to Mike Vick. But I think we're actually starting to see Lamar Jackson. Obviously, this had to come if he was going to, continue with his NFL career without kamikazing. But I think this is a good sign, especially if you're a Ravens fan, that you've got a quarterback who plans on sticking around for another 10 years. And I think if he continues to play at this level, he's got a lot of MVPs going in the next couple seasons. I think I have been a Lamar hater, I will say, because I have been that person who's been like, okay, do it again. Because in the last couple seasons, it felt like we haven't been seeing the same Lamar Jackson. I think despite his stats, sure, they're lower, but they are a lot better. I think that if he continues at this rate, then I have no issue with giving him MVP. Even if maybe it's not flashy, maybe some of the numbers aren't as big as you would be used to, it's still very impressive what he's currently doing.
Yep. Yeah, and I think you put that really well. I think it's the kind of approach that will have a lot more success in the future. And it's not like he has any less skill than that 2019 MVP season. He's just more selective on how to use it, and that almost makes it more effective, which I think is great. That Ravens team is scary, and I'm so glad we don't have to play them again. I'm so glad. Oh,
yeah,
God.
No, I mean, I can say the same. Despite not even watching that game, everything, because I just didn't have time, everything I heard about it was just like, God.
This burned into my retinas.
The first thing I said after hearing the score was, oh, thank God I missed that one.
Yeah.
Like, I mean...
You would have had a more fun time doing literally anything else. I did. Sad. Yeah. I sat there from kickoff till the final score graphic showed up on CBS because I am a lunatic. But if the Seahawks if the Seahawks play like that, I mean, like it was mostly because the Ravens are a really good team. But if the Seahawks play like that next week, I'm gonna be at that game. I was telling my girlfriend I'm just jumping off the third deck of Lumen Field. Like I can't do that 2 weeks in a row.
Fair enough. Who are they playing?
Do you see it? Washington. So extra if they don't.
Yeah, I was gonna
extra
say,
if they play like that, then you're gonna see me dive
Sam
bombing
Howell
it.
will
Like,
be the death of Caleb Peterson. Put that on a tombstone.
oh god, oh god. If you see a blood splatter on Lumen Field, and there will be no Trick Play podcast anymore. It will be canceled.
I'll be doing it. No, I'll just put a computer in front of your gravestone. It'll be the shittiest podcast ever. Simon talks to a wall for 2 hours.
I'd watch that.
Yeah, that actually would be what they force you to watch in purgatory. Like that would be it. Just like
It's like I would still be doing the podcast, but I can't say anything bad. I'm just like screaming.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd just be talking shit about the Seahawks the entire time as well. It'd be great. Okay, well, we can move on. NHL is next up. Let's talk about that.
Yep.
We're going to be jumping into something that has been very heavy on my heart for the last, I want to say week, but it's definitely been longer than that. And that is the Pacific Division in the NHL right now. Because there's some teams more than others, I will say. But there is a lot going on in this division. A lot of good things and a lot of bad. A lot of bad. Extreme amounts of bad. And we're going to be jumping into as much of it as we can in probably about a 30-minute time frame. But we're going to be mostly aiming towards the Flames, the Canucks, and the Oilers. Because we've kind of agreed that that's probably where most of the interest is going to be.
Those are the biggest surprises.
Yeah.
Everything else, it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, you want us to talk for 30 minutes about how the Golden Knights are at the top of this division?
Oh, wow. Who thought that was
Shocker. I think the more interesting story is how the Sharks haven't won a game this year. The Flames suck. That's not that surprising. But the Oilers are also bad. And somehow that is the 3 worst teams in the NHL, and they are all in the Pacific. And the Canucks are shocking, too. Like you said, the Canucks are having a remarkable year. And not a lot of people saw that coming. That's for sure. But we can get right into it. I don't know where you want to start, Caleb. I know we were talking a bit about the Canucks. I don't know if you want to start with that or if you want to start elsewhere.
I can hop into the Canucks. You want to take I think the Canucks are fascinating. So I had, obviously, living in Vancouver, I've had conversations about the Canucks more than I have about any other team, just based on where I live. And I've been talking to my friends Ryan and Akshay about this. Akshay, he's from India. He's just getting into hockey, so he started becoming a Canucks fan because obviously living here. And I was kind of like, that's a stupid idea. They're going to be very bad. That's what I told him.
You were trying to bring him over to come to the flaming bandwagon. We know it's on fire, but it's still a ton of fun.
I wasn't even trying to tell him to become a Flames fan because I was like, I know that's going to be painful too. I was like, you're a new NHL fan. You have so many teams to choose from. Why would you choose the Canucks? Yeah. That sounds like an awful proposition.
To be fair, I think I could say the same about the Flames. So I'd probably be telling him like, hey buddy, everybody will hate you, but hey, Vegas is pretty nice.
Yeah, no,
go be a Vegas fan.
Man. I was like, there's Carol. Like you could go Carolina. Like there's so many teams that would be fun.
I don't want to tell you to bandwagon, but motherfucker, anywhere but Vancouver. Anywhere, literally, spin a wheel.
And that's what I was thinking. I was even like to the point where I was like, this Canucks team, like with how they were like getting rid of what's his Bo Horvat, getting rid of Bo Horvat. Where I was like,
I thought that was going to be the sign that. Because
they're tearing it down.
If you want to jump into, I think that is a good place to start. We can talk about where the expectations at the beginning of the year were, because I think one of the biggest shocker with this team has been in between the pipes, which is Thatcher Demko. I had very high expectations for Demko coming into the NHL. I thought that I looked at him the same way I look at Devin Levi now. I think that, and I think that there is a lot of comparisons between not only, how they play and just the type of prospects they were back then. And then Demko fell off a cliff. Like, he looked like the most average goaltender in the NHL for probably the last 2 years, ever since Markstrom was traded. I can tell you that I felt like a lot of those Canucks fans, or not traded, sorry, he left, but it felt like a lot of those, when Markstrom left, a lot of Canucks fans were very much, not gonna miss ya. We got our guy, right? And obviously, fair enough, because at the time it really looked like Demko was going to be that guy for them, and it so far before the season did not look like it was panning out. And then, sorry, Jesus Christ, Demko. The surprise of Demko's stats caused me to have a fit. Demko's literally a shadow under 950 save percentage, 1.61 goals against average. This dude has 2 shutouts already. What the fuck? Like, nobody could have saw this coming.
Mm-hmm.
And they've also had great play from their backup in DeSmith. Like, they're just having...
Yeah.
And again, whenever I see teams like this that are surprising, the first place I always go to is the goaltending, because I know a lot of people, especially in the last couple of years, like to devalue how good and much an elite goaltender can add to a team. But I will forever be on the bandwagon that a good goalie or an elite goalie can carry a team in more ways than you can ever imagine. And I think that this is a case of that, where as good as the Canucks have been, I think so much of their success so far has been on Thatcher Demko, and there has been no sign of him falling off. I think that there is a very good chance that at the end of the season, Thatcher Demko could be in the argument for, like, the Vezina. And that's a crazy statement to say, like, all things considered, but it's
Would you think he's the
true.
front runner right now? If you were to, obviously we're only like 15 games in.
I'd
like,
have to
nothing has
look
happened.
at some other stats for other people before making a prediction like that, because I don't know off the top of my head.
I think he'd definitely at least be a finalist right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
There's no.
I think that it's not a hard choice either. I think the thing is, I do want to say yes, just looking at this, because that save percentage is making my mouth water. But it's just...
It's such a small sample size.
It's such a small sample size, and also I just have to look at some other... Because off the top of my head, I could not tell you how good of a season, like, Shesterkin's having, how good of a season Sorokin's having. Like, I'd have to go look at those guys, and then I could tell you. But I think...
Demko has been the most notable just because of how he's performed relative to what the expectations were.
I mean, talk about expectations for how bad this defense for the Canucks was going to be this year, especially considering you lose Bo Horvat, who's one of the better defensive forwards in the league, which is not exactly where people talk about him, but that is where he's very, very good. And it's kind of weird actually how losing your best defensive forward made your goaltender elite. I'd love to hear the science behind that one, but it's just pretty nuts. And I mean, you look at a lot of players. I obviously, with how much I'm talking about Demko early in this one, it's devaluing how good the rest of this team has been. Because I mean, Quinn Hughes is currently 8 points over a point per game, and he's obviously a defenseman.
Quinn Hughes has been insane.
He has been insane, and I mean, Patterson has looked incredible. He's looking like what a lot of people thought he would be after that rookie year and after a lot of stuff. And he hasn't been bad, but he's not necessarily been as elite as I definitely thought he would be early on. JT Miller's bouncing back. Brock Besser is looking like an early I want to say injuries. I think he had some injury issues, because I'm trying to put a reason behind why it seemed like he fell off a cliff. And they're just getting scoring from a lot of people who I can't say I expected to have the type of season they're having. Like, it's just crazy to me. This team is incredible.
Yeah.
Like, they have...
It is.
Sure, a lot of it is because a lot of players are overplaying and are playing very much over what they can be expected to play for the entire season. But... I mean, who knows? I personally would not be against the idea of the Canucks potentially being at the top of this division at the end of the year, because that'd be awesome. That'd be cool to see. They have a fun team.
I wouldn't say the top of this division.
Not the
top. How Vegas is playing.
You know what I mean, though. I'm saying
playoff spot.
When I say top, I mean like top couple teams. That's what I mean.
Top, not Vegas. Yeah.
Top, not Vegas.
Like I think when I'm looking at this Canucks team. And this is another conversation I had with Ryan and Akshay was, okay, they're doing really good so far. but this is hockey and it's 82 games, and I
Yeah.
don't really care about what they do in the first 10 games. Like, show me how you can continue to play. And so I think I made this proposition with Ryan where I was like, give me their next eight games, and if they go like, I think the benchmark I said was like, I think I said next 10 if they go. I think I said next 10 if they go like 6-4.
Yeah.
Like, I'll believe that. And they are doing way better than that in the last, like, I don't think they've lost a game since I said that. Like, they've just been rattling off wins.
They're currently on a 4-game win streak.
Yeah, I think I said that right after they lost. And they've ripped off 4 wins in a row. And I mean, it is still like a little bit like, I don't know, like, are they going to keep it up? Because I do think they are the benefactors of a lot of luck. A lot of times when you see seasons like Thatcher Demko is having, obviously it's because he's an amazing goaltender, but like a lot of the times you do regress to the mean a little bit. When you see crazy seasons like this from a goaltender that kind of come out of nowhere. I also think, like, I saw a stat somewhere that just says like their shooting percentage is through the roof. Which is an indication that they are getting lucky on a lot of these. There's a Canucks game that I went to, Canucks versus Predators. They won that game. It wasn't particularly close. I believe it was 5-3 in the end. But a lot of the goals that the Canucks did get, I was like, if Saros was in net, like, this would be going to overtime, just because it was like some of the goals were just sneaking through, like, got hit by the glove, but wasn't able to snag it, so it goes on through. They got one that like tipped off the back of a defender. Like, they are getting some luck, but the more they continue to win and the more consistent they are, I start being like, I don't know, maybe it's more than I would have thought. And I think it's because of the play of guys like Pettersson that are making up for a lot of the lack of talent that we would have thought they would have had. It's because their top players are performing like better than they ever have,
and what
better than they ever have.
Expected.
So it's like Quinn, better than what we expected, but also like this is looking like, we don't know how high they're going to be able to go, but it's already looking like a career year for Hughes, Pettersson, Demko, potentially Besser. Like, those are 4 guys having like, and Miller. Like 5 guys potentially having career best seasons all at the same time. That's kind of why they're playing this way. And if they can keep it up, like, they might be someone to watch out for in the playoffs. I'm interested to see how they do against good teams like the Golden Knights. If they have a game against Vegas, that will be very fascinating.
And to quickly jump in on that, I think that they don't necessarily have to be as good as they are right now to take this second spot in the Pacific if things continue to go the way that things are going. Because especially with the Flames underperforming, Edmonton extremely underperforming, I think that really frees up. If you asked anybody, if you asked me and you at the beginning of this season what the 1, 2, 3 was going to be, it would be Vegas and then some order of the Flames and Oilers. With most people probably putting the Oilers in front, which is why I say extremely underperforming in their case. And I think the fact just those 2 teams falling to the bottom has moved a lot of very undeserving teams up. And sure, the Kings are looking very good right now, 7-2-2. Ducks are currently 7-4. And something that I'm surprised I haven't heard about this, and I'm sure you haven't. They're on a 6-game win streak.
The Ducks? Well, I don't know if I didn't hear about the 6-game win streak, but I heard about some of the teams they're beating. Like, they handed Boston their first loss, and I think they handed Vegas their first loss. They're beating good teams.
Well, that basically means they started the season 1-4 and then have won 6 straight, which is ridiculous.
That's kind of crazy.
That is very crazy. Like, I think that's incredible. And I don't know how I hadn't heard about that. That's another big story on the Pacific Division. But I think that I actually do like this Kings team more than most. I think I like a lot of players on it. But I think that I don't think they stay at the rate that they're going. I don't think 7-2-2. They're not going to average that for the rest of the year. Neither will the Ducks. The Ducks will fall off again. They're riding a hot horse. And I don't know. We should move into the Flames and Oilers. That's kind of where I'm trying to go with this. I don't know where you want to start. We could start at the bottom with the Oilers and then move into the Flames to finish it off. But what would you rather?
I mean, it's just we can start with the Oilers and end with the Flames.
Let's do that.
It's the same kind of thing that I have with the Canucks, but in the opposite direction, to where I'm like, when is it gonna turn around? And it just hasn't.
And there's been a lot of
It's
points
such
this season where you expected it, because obviously there's the point where at the Winter Classic, getting McDavid back, I think a lot of people saw that as a potential turnaround
And
for
they
this
crushed,
team, and it
they
hasn't
crushed
been.
the Flames and then lose 3 in a row.
Yeah, and it almost felt like they had a bounce back game for one night.
Mm-hmm.
And certain players aren't playing bad. Like that's the weirdest part about this team, because just looking at like their total stats, like Draisaitl's having a pretty solid season, Hyman's having a very good season, Bouchard is having an under the radar, very very strong season, and then you get to McDavid is a point per game, and then it falls off a cliff. Like they after their first 7 players, they don't have a single player over 5 points. They only have 7, or a better way to put that, they don't have a single player. They only have 7 players over 5 points, which is bad. Just to be clear, that's very bad.
And I think you put that all on Ken Holland, because what has always been the issue with this Oilers team? What is literally every single year been the issue with this Oilers team? They are top heavy. And what did he do to address that? He brought in Connor fucking Brown, who has done nothing, and was on the top line for about like 5 days. I would bet 0. I don't know, but I would bet 0. Because he's not a difference maker. And it's kind of just crazy.
You were dead on.
And it's crazy to think that so many...
that coming. Oh,
yeah, well, I wonder which podcast was
what
saying
ingenious next level analyst podcast could have saw the prediction that Connor Brown, a player who hasn't been good since 2015 on the fucking Erie Otters, hasn't been good since then. Who could have saw that coming? It's like it's almost
crazy
like
because
CHL
so many people
skill.
thought it would just happen.
CHL skill. Skill playing against 16-year-olds who weigh 150 pounds does not necessarily translate to the National Hockey League.
Yeah, and it's crazy because so many people just took it for granted that it would fix this team's entire problems.
I should give you the Jonathan Drouin thing. You were dead on that as well. But like you got both.
How many points has he gotten for you in fantasy?
That's true. Yeah. I was fairly confident about that. Well, and to be fair though, I think that the Drouin one is weirder to me, because at least when I look at Drouin, he actually was very skilled and had a lot of potential.
He had NHL
Those are two
success.
things. Both had NHL success and real NHL potential. When you look at Connor Brown, you can say whatever you want about back when he was in juniors, but I don't think there has been a single point in his NHL career where anybody's looked at Connor Brown and said, that guy right there looks like a guy who can have a 15-year NHL career. Not one point. Like, sure, you could say whatever you want about CHL juniors hype, but I'm talking about what he's done at this level has shown you that he would succeed here at this next level, and I don't think anything has. Jonathan Drouin, that's not the case at all. I made that prediction off of if he could return back to and potentially show that potential with the best teammates he's ever played with. And sure, you can say whatever you want. I don't think he spent much time with Steven Stamkos, so I'm just gonna say that on that top line anyway. But anyway, I think
it's not like Bruins on that top line anymore.
Yeah, but I just mean like in the past, like in his rookie years. But I think a big storyline for the Oilers this season has been, and there's a big story that came out of it today, where I'm trying to decide how I want to open this. So they cut Jack Campbell, or not cut, they waived him, I should say. I was in the room. I got to deliver that news to an Oilers fan. I wish I recorded his reaction, because it was as if I just told him that he had won the lottery. Because that has been how bad Jack Campbell has been so far this season. I ran you through how Thatcher Demko, I just butchered his last name so hard there. I'm sick, forgive me. I'm trying. But anyway, Jack Campbell, his stats are so bad. So bad. How is this... okay. Save percentage, 873. That's not that bad. That's just a goalie starting off the season poorly. Right? That's all I think there. When I see a goals against average of 4.5, I don't think that you're starting the season bad. I think that you should be taking up a job as a school janitor. Because you cannot stop shit. You are letting off 4.5 goals a game. What the hell? Yeah. You should not be anywhere remotely close to posts. You should be away. God. It's just... And the worst part is, they put him down fully knowing that they had no one in their AHL system anywhere.
Calvin Pickard.
Calvin, is that who they officially called up? Their other option was Olivier Rodrigo, I think his name is. I don't remember.
Olivia Rodrigo?
It's something like
pulling
that.
up Olivia Rodrigo?
Something like that.
Damn, maybe they have a stronger farm system than I thought. She's pretty talented.
No, it's a very similar name to hers though. That's the joke people are making. That's why I know I messed up the name, because that's where my brain went. I went to the memes, because that is a meme, by the way. That's why I knew his name beforehand.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they have a guy I think his name is literally, I think it might be Oliver actually, but it's
Oliver
the same
Rodrigo?
last name. Or Rod, I think. You can look him up.
Is it Olivier Rodrigue?
Oh, that might be it. Yeah, that is it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very similar name. I think that he might be their best shot. But who knows? I mean, anything's better than 4.5. Buddy, the bar is very low.
And it's crazy. It's
Calvin
crazy
Pickard, the ideal 2015 example of a goaltender who's too good for the AHL but too bad for the NHL. Edmonton Oilers fans, I'm sure they're hyped, but how the hell is a guy who lets in 4.5 goals a game better than Dustin fucking Wolf? Get that man on an NHL roster, and it better be the Flames. If he gets pissed off and goes somewhere else, I will cry. First, you lose Matthew Phillips. I messed up my camera bad when I hit my desk. But when Matthew Phillips left, I was sad because I thought he was going to be so good for the Flames, and now he's going to be so good for Washington, and it's very depressing. But I think that, and he necessarily hasn't shown that quite yet, but I still think he's going to be incredible when he starts to show out. If we somehow screw up Dustin Wolf, the guy who has a win percentage in the AHL of 80, 20, and 5 or something like that,
the AHL goalie of the year 2 years in a row?
Craig. This is me, Craig. You're a nice guy. I've met you in real life. You are a very nice guy. You signed an autograph for my sister, and I like you for that. But if you mess up Dustin Wolf, I swear to fucking God, I will not forgive you. We haven't had a good goaltender since Jacob Markstrom was fine. Jonas Hiller was fine at points. Skipper? This is the first guy Kipper who has given me as much hope as we had when we had Kipper. Do not mess this up for me. I cannot survive without seeing Dustin Wolf dominate for this team. I want to be able to go buy a Flames Dustin Wolf jersey so bad, but I am so scared.
To put that in perspective, we haven't had a goalie that has the potential to be this good since Craig Conroy was playing.
Yeah. And the worst part is I don't disagree with the idea of letting him get more potential, because I understand the idea of not wanting to bring up a prospect too early and ruining their confidence. That's fine. That's fine and dandy. But I think that should not be being applied here. Because Dustin...
But he's already played 2 full seasons in the AHL.
And
he's already gotten that experience.
Can I just also point out this? His confidence is at an all-time high. The worst thing that happens is he sucks for 3 games and we send him down and he'll be fine. That is the worst case scenario here. If in the WHL, he won goalie of the year after being a 7th round pick. Then he moved up to the AHL, won goalie of the year and MVP. he has a track record that says that on the next level, whenever he's had to move up, he shows out. Last season, when we saw him, I thought he was very impressive. In the one game he had. A lot of things that I saw were things that I have
save percentage in that game.
A lot of things that I saw in that game, I felt like I hadn't seen from a goaltender in between the pipes since a guy like Kipper. And I think that he has the type of athleticism that is so rare in goaltenders. I think I know, biased Flames fan, yada, yada, yada. That is generational athleticism in between the pipes, and we are letting that go to waste. I don't know if I have ever seen somebody be so quick, because that is how I would describe him. He is so quick and so good, and we are letting him waste in the AHL playing in front of 500 people for the Wranglers. What the hell?
Yeah.
Like, it's... Yeah. I can't even begin to unpack how pissed off I am at the management for keeping Dan Vladar. And Dan Vladar is a fine backup goaltender, but losing him will never be a bad thing. 190% of Dan Vladar can be replaced by Oscar Dansk. I'm just saying. You risk Dan Vladar through waivers once and he gets grabbed, you are not losing that much.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the point to make. It's like it sucks because in comparison to what they have now, he's already better. And you also have to think about a guy like Matthew Phillips and thinking like how much patience does a guy like Dustin Wolf have, because he knows that he's good enough to be in the league right now. He knows he could start for a lot of the 32 NHL teams, or at least be a backup for probably pretty much all of them.
Except the Bruins.
How long? Yeah, okay. How long until you're a guy like Dustin Wolf and you just say like I've had enough?
How long until you make the same decision Matthew Phillips made?
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
Yeah,
that's exactly my point. Like, I can't imagine like how much, because it's not like he's gonna say anything, but like, wouldn't you resent a franchise like that that's just kept you at a lower level, even though you have the ability to come up? So when it comes time to say, hey, do I re-sign with the Flames or not? Like, what is he gonna think? That's kind of the thing.
And it's not like we're close to that at all. Like, we're not anywhere near
that.
No,
but it's projecting that into the future, because it's like the longer this goes on, and how much does that have an impact?
And I understand the idea of, especially with goaltenders, you always want to be safe because confidence is such a big thing. I just think that his confidence has to be so high that a 3-game tester period will not kill him. If anything, it might help. Because I think one of the bigger issues for the Flames this year has been in between the pipes. And while I have been a defender of Markstrom this year because I don't think his stats necessarily show how well he's been or how good he's been, I think that you seriously are not losing much in Dan Vladar potentially going down through waivers. I think you are losing so little and potentially gaining the start of a legendary career. I think that, seriously, I have no issue paying Markstrom $6 million to ride the bench for the next 3 years, knowing who the starter is. Just to be clear.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I've been so frustrated with this Flames team this year. And I knew it was coming. Like, I remember saying to you, Caleb, that I was excited for this team, but I was, like every year, I knew that was just going to lead to disappointment, because it does every time. But it feels like, there's a lot of times with this team where it's just like, I don't even have an answer for you to what's wrong. I have an answer. I know exactly what fixes this team. You know exactly what fixes this team. Craig Conroy knows exactly what fixes this team, but he's not doing it. And it's really frustrating, especially considering the one thing that I've really liked about Craig Conroy, the fact that the only issue I've had with Conroy so far in this season, and Huska, frankly, is the fact that they haven't called up Dustin Wolf yet, shows that I think that they're doing a lot of good things. I like that Conroy's been pulling up a lot of newer, younger players. And I like the selection he's been making because I found I think his name's Prospil. Can you correct me on that immediately?
Pospisil?
Pospisil. I don't know, man. I'm tired. But he's been great so far. I've got the Flames game running in the background, and even in this one, he's looked really good. He's had a couple of really nice chances. At the end of the first, he had a really nice rush towards the net that I was telling you in between segments that gave me a lot of very good things because he just looked like a really strong attacker in that position, where that's not necessarily something you see from a guy coming out of the AHL, because that's usually something you see from somebody who's an NHL veteran and is used to pushing towards the net against NHL level defensemen just strength wise. But Pospisil just with no issue broke right through the defense, and I thought that was really impressive. I think that's not necessarily something you see from a rookie, so I thought that was awesome. I've really liked their selection of who they've been calling up. I think that they just need to make one more right. And the worst part is, it almost makes me want the Flames to suck for like another 5 games, because I think that's all it's going to take. I think that with how many people, I don't think that Craig Conroy's an idiot. I think he knows what's going on. And with how he's already shown this year, he's not afraid to send people down who might get grabbed. I think that the next guy down is Dan Vladar.
Yeah, and I think it kind of has to be that way. In terms of Craig Conroy, like you say, he's been doing a good job so far. I don't think we can judge him good or bad yet. I think it's all going to come down, because we want to talk about the Flames in a broader context.
But when
now,
I say that, can I just quickly defend myself first before you, because I know where you're going with it a little bit. I think that one thing that I really like about him from what I've seen and in interviews is it's very, very clear that he is very, very active when watching this team. He is almost a scout. Yeah. I think, and I really like that about him so far. He's shown that he really cares about this team. And I think that's so big. Even if I know a lot of people had issues with his inaction in the offseason, and including me. I thought that there were more moves that could have been made. And I did have quite a few issues with the ones he has made. In the season so far, I think that he's been really good. I think he's been making a lot of the moves that I've wanted him to make and would have made myself. It's that weird thing where you're playing GM as the fan, right? The one issue I've had.
Simon.
Yeah.
Do you still say that even though he sent down Coronado to the minors?
Yes. I think that was the right move. I actually don't have much issue with that. I think that a lot of people were mad at it because, sure, it's just a rookie learning how to be up there, but I think it's the type of thing where pro hockey is pro hockey. I don't think that 5 games in the AHL will kill Coronado. In fact, in his first game, he already had a goal. I think, if anything, it's just bringing up the confidence again, because I think, sure, he had a pretty good first couple games for the Flames, but I think he started to kind of fall into the... It seemed like the Flames didn't really know where to put him. He had played with, I think, on every single line with every single player except for 2. Which isn't something you want for a rookie, because I think a huge part of learning how to play in the NHL and learning how to play at that next level is consistency, right? And that is so huge, even if it's just whether that be a point every couple games or what have you, right? It's just, I think not having that for Coronado was kind of costly in the first 10 games, and I think maybe if we had just stuck him on that second line consistently, it would have been better. But, I mean... So I don't have an issue with it. I don't think he's going to be down there for long. I think he'll quickly be coming back up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a minor thing. I do think I was going to say, I think the biggest thing for Conroy that will be the judge of his tenure is how he handles these veteran contracts. And is he going to delude himself into thinking that guys like Lindholm and maybe Hannafin or any of the veterans that are on this team have a future here? Is he going to delude himself into thinking that, or is he actually going to try to lean into a youth culture and try to rebuild this team from the ground up? That's kind of what I'm thinking. And I'm thinking at this trade deadline, I think if you're Craig Conroy, you have to be very active and trying to get rid of as many of these assets as you possibly can to get capital for the future.
Yeah. And I think the nice thing is we already kind of have. I wouldn't have an issue with signing Hannafin. Actually, I think a lot of Flames fans really hate the idea, and I don't think a lot of people hate it because of the number, and they hate it the idea of locking down a player like Hannafin. That's not why I hate it. I actually do like Noah Hannafin as a defenseman, and I would love to be able to keep him. I just think that the fact that we already have Rasmus Anderson and Uyghur locked down makes it really hard. Because
he's a good player, but it's not about winning now. It's not about having good players now.
And
it's about being a good. It has to be a rebuild.
Do you
now.
really want to have three defensemen on your roster making over $7 million?
Do I want to have three defensemen?
Especially when they're not necessarily, none of them, I would say, are necessarily top 15 or even 20 defensemen.
That's why I say, like, you have to try to dump them. You have to try to get rid of them and build for the future.
Ooh. You're saying that you are more on the side of dumping even like Huberdeau, Kadri, Uyghur, Anderson?
I don't think
Is
you
that
can.
Kind of what you're saying?
Oh, yes, absolutely, but I don't think you can. I don't think there's anybody who's going to want them, especially Huberdeau, Kadri. Maybe not Anderson and. Like everybody, Anderson, I'd want to keep a little bit more because he's a little bit on the younger side. But Hubert, I don't think anybody's going to want.
I think that it would be a
Anderson
really bad
would be the one
I'd of Anderson.
I think he'd be the last one I'd ever consider moving. But everybody else, I think, is wide open.
I think I disagree with you on that because I almost say Uyghur has quickly crept into a very similar spot as Anderson, where I think both of them are definitely protected. I think. Kadri I think Kadri's the most movable. Because while he has been very disappointing, just alongside Huberdeau, he is totally the type of player that I could 100% see bouncing back on another team. Huberdeau...
Yeah, but who's going to want him for that amount of money? Who's going to want him for that amount of money? Nobody.
Yeah.
We overpaid both Kadri and Huberdeau, so nobody is going to want them.
And that is the tough part. Yeah, one second. I forget the exact numbers on his contract, so I'm looking that up quick.
Like the point of dealing these players is to get something for them. If you're dealing Huberdeau and Kadri, you're going to have to pay people to take them from you.
Yeah, and the thing is, 6 years, $7 million is what's left of his contract. And did your phone die? I think his phone might have died. Yeah, Caleb's phone just died. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up what I'm saying, and then I'm going to wrap up the segment. Anyway. Solo Simon podcast for 2 minutes. What I was going to say, Nazem Kadri, I think that he has been Caleb, are you back?
I'm back.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was just going to wrap up. I was going to wrap up what I was saying and then end the segment. But anyway, yeah, I can't hear you. You're good. But what I was going to say is 6 years, $7 million. That is bad. But I think that I think he is actually kind of movable. Because I thought that his contract was a little bit, we'd be retaining a lot. I think that you're looking at it without retaining. I can't hear you right now.
I guess. That's the only way I could ever see it.
Look at it like this.
I can't
Flames
see it
retain
in any
half.
other
Flames take half. Are you telling me there's not a lot of teams in this league that would take Kadri for 3.5? Or even not even the Flames don't even retain half. They retain just under 4.5. Kadri's a player who I could see anywhere around 5. I think there's a lot of teams in the league that would be willing to take him, and I think that's the only way that the Flames move him.
Even if we retain half, has he been playing well enough for a team to want to give up anything for him?
That's the thing that I was going to say as well. I think that it would be the type of move where it's just the Flames are cutting their losses. I could see us potentially getting a low-level prospect and maybe a mid-round pick for him. And it'd just be the type of situation where we're just trying to open up a roster spot. I don't think it's not worth it. I wouldn't be opposed to it because of the roster spot it opens. But, yeah, I don't know. I think that's a conversation to have around the trade deadline.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the Flames need to be active around the trade deadline. If they're not, then
yes.
Then Conroy's tenure is looking a little bit.
Because I do agree with you. I think that the Flames do need to start heading in that direction. I think Huberdeau's unmovable. We're stuck with Hubie. We're stuck with Hubie Dooby Doo. Hopefully he turns it around. But I think that Kadri is very much not so. I think if any of the players you listed, that being Huberdeau, Kadri, Uyghur, and Anderson, leave this team in the next before their contract ends, it'll be Kadri. And I almost guarantee you it will be Kadri. Because even just like looking at the effect and the stories like that all these players have had in the last couple of years with the Flames, Huberdeau's unmovable. Weegar has very much shown that he's already a leader in this locker room, and you can say the exact same thing about Anderson. Kadri is the black sheep, if you will, where he's the guy who almost has stuck out on this out of all those four players. And he has, in recent weeks, we've actually heard, I think actually yesterday the story came out about him mentoring Connor Zary, which I think which I think is awesome, because I think that if Zary can maybe gain a little bit from Kadri, that actually adds a lot to his chances of staying up at the NHL level. Because, I mean, especially, I think Kadri's doing him a big favor there, right? Where, like, it's the type of thing where if it's shown that he's actually getting a lot of playing at the NHL level, even if he's not necessarily showing it in the box score, I think that it makes it a lot easier to keep him on the main roster. But, yeah, I think if anybody gets moved, it's Kadri, and I think he's the only one who I can even imagine leaving.
Well, out of those four, yeah. But I think if anybody gets moved, it's going to be like Lindholm.
Oh, sure. No, that's like, not what
those are the guys that need to be out to like now.
That's not the statement I was making. I was just saying based on the guys we have on long contracts. And you can throw Markstrom in there as well if you want. But I think that
I agree with you then.
Yeah, because it's just the type of thing where, like, I think that there's no way we're retaining anything on Huberdeau. That's not worth it. Like, his contract's too big.
We're keeping him forever.
$3.5 million for 3 years is not that bad.
For Kadri,
that's not that bad, especially if you look at it like this. Chances are that spot's going to be getting filled by someone on a rookie contract.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have much issue with it. So I think that that's the thing that would make the most sense to me. That's probably where I would look for a trade. Everywhere else.
My only thing. So you prioritize Lindholm and Hanifin, getting rid of them, and then out of the guys that have long-term contracts, I think it's easiest to move Kadri. But like,
I think
again, my point is just that I don't think it's gonna get back enough to where you're gonna want to.
And that's not what I'm saying. Like I'm saying that I think that it's totally just about like beginning that rebuild. I think that's what it'll take, even if you don't get much out of it. Like, you're just getting rid of a bad contract and you're freeing up a roster spot. Because, sure, Kadri's fine, but do you really want that spot in the top 6 taken for the next 6 years from a guy like Coronado or a guy like Zary or a guy like anybody moving through the AHL or even a guy we draft? Do you really want Kadri to be the guy stealing all of those minutes when he doesn't deserve his contract now?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it just comes down to that, right? Like, I think that there's a lot of teams that would have no issue taking him at 3.5, especially a team that is contending and could very much, or contending in the future, that can afford 3.5 for a guy like Kadri, who right now is absolutely a top 6 forward if he can, get back into that spot on a good team. And at worst, he's a very good third line center.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, we can move on.
Thanks again, everybody, for watching the Trick Play podcast this week. If you enjoyed what you listened to, then you can subscribe to us on YouTube, find us on Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. If you're looking for audio, make sure to find us. Boom, I got it this time right here. Oh, that was smooth.
Oh, crap. No. Wait, there we go.
Come on, there you go. You got to get the practice.
One of us always has to mess up. That's how it is.
Yeah.
I thought I had it down until. Yeah.
Until you're so confident, you're like, oh no, this way. But yeah, Fresh Take Network is where you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your audio podcasts. But other than that, I'm gonna move on to I'm being a real negative Nancy this week. I have another anti-shout. I guess I did do a positive one last week with my beautiful filming location, but I'm gonna do an anti-shout out this week, and it's something we already talked about on the podcast. which is why it's not going to get a full segment. But there's just another detail to a story we talked about that I think is one of the craziest things I've ever heard. So the Las Vegas Raiders, we talked about it last week. They fired Josh McDaniels and they fired Dave Ziegler. I don't know if you've heard this, Simon, but details have come out about what the end of Josh McDaniels' tenure in Las Vegas looked like, and
I think I heard about it.
Oh, so
although
obviously,
I heard about it and I thought it was a joke tweet.
I know it sounds like a joke tweet, but it's not. Multiple sources have corroborated that this did indeed happen.
Okay, well, we're going to see if we're talking about the same thing. So, but if we are, then yeah.
Oh, I'm sure we are, because again, I thought it sounded like a joke tweet too.
Because I don't know when this came out, but I just want to open by saying I heard about this before we recorded that segment. I saw one source say it, and I was like, I'm not going to mention that because there's no way that's real.
Maybe if it came out before we recorded it, maybe we're not thinking of the same thing, but we'll see. So, the Raiders. I just did great last week. They blew out the Giants, partially because the Giants are bad, but you can also see that players are playing a lot more free. Josh McDaniels was clearly bringing them down. I heard a stat. I'm gonna butcher this stat because I heard it on a podcast while I was half awake, but it was something like the last time the Raiders had a shutout going into half was in 2012, and guess who that was against? The Denver Broncos and Josh McDaniels.
Oh. Wow.
Which is that's another detail, but that's kind of funny. But so you can see they're playing a lot freely, and based on the details that came out of a meeting that the Raiders had, you might see why. So you might not have heard of this then. This is wild. So the Raiders, obviously they weren't doing well, so Josh McDaniels decided to have a meeting where players could openly talk about
oh shit. I was gonna have another guess. I was gonna guess first. I was gonna guess.
You can still fire a guess because I don't know if you know where this is gonna go. Yeah. So
hey, Jimmy G, listen, buddy. There's only one way we can fix this, dude. I've got the TV set up. I'm gonna need to look at your phone. We're gonna have to go through the phone. Let's see that Tetris head score. Let's see your Clash of Clans base. We got to go through it all, buddy. It's the only way we can fix this team. That's my guess, personally.
He did not like Babcock.
Darn.
But it was almost it's not the same kind of bad, but it's still pretty bad. So he holds this meeting, and the players, and he kind of intends it to be a moment where the players can all come together, right, and start reforming their team. But what it instead turns into is players completely airing their grievances about Josh McDaniels and just being completely fed up with his style of coaching. And apparently it's so bad that Josh McDaniels, weak man that he is, decides that he cannot stand up for himself. He does not feel like he has the power to speak for himself. So he turns to the new coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, Antonio Pierce, to speak on his behalf and defend him.
Holy crap!
So Antonio Pierce, who is beloved by the players in this locker room, starts defending Josh McDaniels and defending the way they've been doing it, and tries, in the meantime, less so defending him and trying to bring them together as a team, because that's his ultimate goal. Yeah. He talks about how things may seem bleak now, but he brings up I think he was somehow involved in the Giants in the early 2010s, where he said, think about that team where they went up against the undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl, but we came into that thinking we could win no matter who the opponent was. Any given Sunday, if you have belief in yourself, you can win. That's the point he's making to the team. That's what he wants them to embody going forward. Very obvious, good coaching message.
Yeah.
But Josh McDaniels, after not being able to speak up for himself and nominating Antonio Pierce to speak for him, waits until the players leave the room and gets furious at Antonio Pierce.
Wow.
And says to him, "Don't you ever talk about the Patriots like that." Because who was the offensive coordinator of that team? Josh McDaniels. So that's what came out of the Las Vegas Raiders the last day. And just goes to show that we thought Josh McDaniels was terrible. But he's even worse than we thought. Because not only can he not stand up for
way
himself,
worse than the Mike Babcock thing. Holy crap!
it's so much worse. It's so much worse. Not only can he not stand up for himself, but when the guy who nominates to stand up for himself brings up
Good
like
on
a perfectly
Antonio
good
Pierce.
argument, he gets all self-defensive. Yeah, go Antonio Pierce.
Yeah.
And Josh McDaniels is never getting another head coaching job in the NFL ever again.
No.
Um,
The only place
think it
he'd
would
ever
be a
get
shame
hired
if he
even
even
as an
gets in-
offensive coordinator would be the Patriots.
yeah, under Bill Belichick specifically.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I thought that was
that's
obvious.
the only context he works. That's
yeah.
the only context. Well, because Bill Belichick's not going to be the coach of the Patriots for much longer. But
well, I'm assuming that guy's been there for longer than time. My shout out is actually, I don't necessarily want to call it. It's a shout out, but it's not necessarily. I won't label it as good or bad. I just want to shout it out because it's something that has been a very, very commonplace in the NHL for the last couple of years, and I think it has been talked about a lot. It actually, I looked down and they were just talking about it during the intermission of the Flames game. But Trevor Freeman, who was one of the traveling Yoggers, passed away. I don't know if it was, I think it was over the last weekend. But I thought about shouting that out because I think that is so awesome. I think if you followed their entire journey, adding people with Yager throughout the NHL, I think that is the type of fans who need to be talked about more in the NHL because that was so awesome when that was happening. Getting that in Calgary for the short period we did was so cool. And in the last week on Twitter especially, I've seen a lot of stories, even in Yager's short time and their short time in Calgary, a lot of people coming out and telling stories about meeting Trevor when he was part of the group and all that. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming out about them in the last week. So I wanted to highlight that because that's a really cool. There's been a lot more. It felt like we haven't heard from them in a couple of years, and being able to hear that they're still going strong in the Czech Republic has been pretty cool. Because apparently they did travel to the Czech Republic this last week to celebrate with Yager to honor obviously their founder, which is just awesome. So I wanted to shout out that.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite as funny as the whole McDaniels thing, but I think it deserves to be pointed out because it's a good story. It's just pointing out because they're really cool. If you weren't around necessarily as a fan that far back to remember what it was like seeing the group of Yoggers in the crowd, I'd look up some videos of them because they were pretty funny.
It was an event.
Yeah.
Anytime they were there.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, we can wrap up the podcast, I think we're good. That's kind of ending it on a more depressing note compared to the McDaniels thing, but I wanted to make sure that I pointed it out because it's a good story.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah. Also, the Flames suck. I'll also end it on that. I'm watching the Flames national game right now. They're still losing.
I think anybody who watched up to this point kind of knows that the Flames suck.
True. No, they heard my rant. That's very true. Everybody watching this heard my rant about. Oh, what a pass, Backlund, buddy, you suck. Okay, never mind. We can wrap up the podcast now. It would have been cool to see a Backlund goal live on the podcast. It didn't happen.
Nope,
that's all.
Not happening.
Yeah, it probably won't happen ever. I wouldn't expect a Backlund goal ever. But I think that'll do it. Thanks again for watching the podcast. Follow us everywhere that you can think of, and we're probably there. Make sure to check us out. If you're watching the video, go check us out on the Fresh Take Network. That's where all of our audio versions go up, including this one. If you're watching it or listening to it over the Fresh Take Network, you can check us out over on YouTube, which is where the video of this version go. That didn't make a lot of sense. You know what I mean. My brain no worky. Thanks for watching.
See you next week.